We're the Cousins
Weird.
and we are virtual again because Colleen family has COVID. Not Colleen this time.
No.
Just
this time it's not me. It's my husband and my son. And my son, this is the second time. He had it right after I got my second shot, like 2 weeks after. So like April, and now he's got the new variant. So we can't be together.
No. They're separate from you?
No, I'm saying me and you can't be together.
Oh yeah, we can't. And that's sad.
No, there's no separating in this house. There's no separating.
But there was a thing yesterday that Jefferson County had 100% of the COVID tests done yesterday were all positive. 100%. Did the person doing the test have COVID? Or did everybody have COVID?
Everyone probably did. Like this,
I wouldn't doubt it.
This new variant is crazy. And like,
is that what Rich has?
Yes, he has 103 temperature. He's all stuffed up. Well, today his temperature broke, thankfully. Griff has like cold symptoms. He felt bad last night. Feels a little better today. I did a home test on Griff. He was positive. Rich went and got his done last night at Well Now, and positive. And I figured, he had it because of his symptoms yesterday. He was fine, and then he wasn't. That's how it comes on so quick. So here we are.
Here we are again. Yeah, we tried to do the Facebook Live, but it sucked, and it was like there was a weird delay, and it was really annoying and impossible to like talk to each other.
Yeah, we couldn't do it.
Because I'm looking and her mouth is moving, and then like 10 seconds later I could hear her voice. So like, oh yeah, that's not cool. We can't do that. Work. No.
And then for our Monday episode, we couldn't get together because of weather. And then this week we haven't been able to get together. We couldn't do our live then and our recording then because we weren't together. And then we were supposed to get together this week, but then everyone gets COVID in my house, so we can't. So it's just, one of those things.
So we'll be virtual on Sunday as well. So just be prepared.
Yep. Virtual yet again.
Yet again. Yeah. And this was my first full day with my specifications of my special diet I'm supposed to be on. And let me tell you, it's not fun at all.
Sorry.
Everything's pretty bland. And I didn't you don't realize how much sodium is in stuff? Like,
yeah.
One tortilla has 800 milligrams of freaking sodium in it.
That's crazy.
And that's something you wouldn't think of. Like, oh, this is healthier than bread. No, it's really not. No. For that, it's not. Like, yeah, you basically can't have bread because it's too much salt. I'm very sad.
I'm sorry.
I made soup today, and the kid's like, need salt. Yeah, of course it needs salt. Because it's made with low sodium broth. And
are you crinkling something?
Oh, I am. I didn't even realize.
I could totally hear your crinkle. I'm like, what's that crinkling? Like, where's that coming from? It's coming from you.
Sorry, that's me. I'm stopping. It's like one of those nervous habit things. You do it and you don't even realize.
Yeah.
But I did go and get some good coffee from my favorite coffee roaster, which is St. Lawrence Valley Roasters Coffee. I got their decaf, and I had coffee this morning that didn't taste like garbage. And it made
awesome.
Me
that does make good for a good day.
The other day because we have one of those like little K-cup brewers, like we had it for our oldest Jackson. He went through that phase where he just wanted to drink Starbucks K-cups,
Right.
Like, I want Starbucks K-cups. Like, of course you do, because you're a little snot. And I'm like, we have fresh roasted coffee, and you want that garbage? Like, no. And, like, I'm rummaging around in the back of the coffee cupboard, and I find this box of K-Cups that's, like, some generic brand, decaf. I'm like, ooh, there's decaf coffee! And I go to Ruben, and I go, honey, I found decaf coffee, and it tastes like crap!
Yay!
Like, yay! Like, but I'm drinking it! And it's gross! And I had to put a lot of shit in it, because it tasted really bad. But this morning I got to drink it black. I made espresso with my decaf, and delightful.
Oh, good.
Could forget it was decaf. It tastes so
good.
Good. Anywho, the topic today is Colleen's gonna be especially fond of it because it's
Oh,
about
goodness.
the favorite part of the body.
Oh, come on now. Why do we gotta go there, your first terrible trend?
I know! It's about the trend of tiny, dainty, small feet.
Ew.
And the Chinese art, or not art, but the Chinese tradition or trend of foot binding. Yeah.
Can't even handle it.
This was disgusting to read about because it's horrible. And what they did to these poor girls is just awful. But it's like it was most prevalent during like Imperial China. We're talking like the Han Dynasty.
Right.
But the rumor is like it was inspired by a 10th century court dancer by the name of Yao Niang, and she bound her feet into the shape of a new moon. And I have no idea what that is and how that's accomplished. It just said that's what she did. And I'm like, that sounds horrible.
Well, we know what a new moon looks like, so you don't want your foot shaped like that.
I'm thinking like, in my brain, I'm thinking like extra ballerina arched feet. And she danced around on them like that.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So, like, by, like, 1279, it was seen as, like, the cultural identity of the Han Dynasty. So, like, that's part of their cultural identity was foot binding. And it was seen as a status of wealth. So women who had these itty bitty tiny feet or foot binding, it was, it showed that your family was wealthy and that you were wealthy because you didn't need to work. You didn't need to stand on your feet and work in the field. These women still stood on their feet and they still had to walk around on them.
Yeah, you have to get from one place to another somehow.
Right. And it's like, you still like need your feet. You need your feet. You can't walk without your feet, you know?
Right.
But it became the standard of beauty in China, and it also was like a prerequisite of finding a husband. So the women with the tiny feet were the ones who found the wealthiest husbands.
Oh, of course.
So, yes. And by the 19th century in China, it was estimated that 40 to 50% of Chinese women had bound feet. And
oh my gosh.
And if you were an upper class, like, if you were in the upper class, it was like 100% of the women in the upper classes had their feet bound.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And in some poor families, it became accustomed to bind the feet of the eldest daughter so that she could marry a wealthy man.
Oh, of course. It's all about
like,
money.
The first daughter, they would bind her feet, and then all the other daughters would have big horse, like elephant feet. You know,
so they can work the field.
As a girl, I'm 5'4", and I wear a size 10 shoe. So I got some big feet on me. I got big old man feet. And
I got big old feet too.
You know, but yes, but you're like a half a foot taller than me, and you only wear one size bigger than me in a shoe.
I wear a 10.
Like, I am the opposite. Like, my feet are so large I trip and fall over them. And it's fine. But I just see these tiny little dainty feet. The ideal length being 3 to 4 inches long. What? Yes. And the tiniest feet that were 3 inches long were referred to as the golden lotus. And the silver lotus was a foot that was 4 inches long, and if it was 5 inches long, then it was an iron lotus, and you basically had no chance of finding a husband if your feet were 5 inches long.
It blows my mind that deformed feet was attractive. Like, I don't even understand it.
Yes. Women with bound feet, they developed a specific walk, and they had to bend their knees slightly and sway back and forth so they didn't lose their balance. And this walk was considered dainty and attractive to men.
Ew.
They had this distinctive sway because their feet, the way they bound their feet, which I'm going to get into in a minute,
oh, God.
made it so they had to walk very strangely. And I mean, their feet were 3 inches long. You're trying to balance, like walking around on stilts all day.
Right.
Like toothpicks. What's wrong with toothpicks? Basically, like, foot binding was applying tight bandages to the feet and the point was to curl all the toes except for the big toe down and inward. So they would wrap those little toes inward, so they just had one big toe in the front. And there was more to it.
My whole body cringed at that.
Get ready.
Cringed.
The process would start at the average age of about 5 or 6, but as early as age 4 and as late as age 9. So we're talking babies here, like 4-year-olds.
Oh my God.
And first they would soak the feet in hot water, and sometimes some things it was like hot water and herbs, and sometimes they said they would use animal blood when they would soak their feet too, but it would be really hot. And then they would remove their feet and they'd clip their toenails as short as they could. And then they would massage the feet with oil. And then the 4 small toes would be bent down to the sole of the foot. And they would be pressed and like pushed on to the point where the toes would break.
Oh my God.
They wanted to break these 4 little toes on their foot, and then they would bind them with they would push them and push them and push them until they cracked and broke, and then they would wrap them with a linen bandage. And then we're not done.
I'm just sitting here, my jaw is like dropped. My mouth is gaped open.
And then once these little 4 toes are broken and they're lying flat on the sole of their foot, so their little toes are wrapped around their foot. My toes can't do that, so I don't even know. With little kids, their bones are more flexible and they have less like meat on their feet. So this is why they do it when they're young. Isn't that awful? Can you imagine doing this to your little baby? I just can't. I can't even.
Come here, child. Let me break your toes.
And then the foot was bent double. Like they would take the ball of the foot and they would try to bend the arch so the ball of the foot would touch the heel. So that it was flat.
I'm gonna puke.
Like they're taking the arch and they're almost like making a fold in the foot, like in the middle of the foot where the arch is. And sometimes this would break the arch, and sometimes they would just wrap the foot as tight as they possibly could. And then they would use after they've wrapped with linen, they would bind the foot with a silk strip that was about 2 inches wide and 10 feet long to bind the feet as tight as they could. So they're pushing all this pressure on the foot and then they're binding it tight. So you're cutting off circulation.
Yeah.
They're just broken all of these toes in this little girl's foot except for the big toe. And then they're binding it in this wrapping. And then they're just like, okay, then you get to.
Now you can live your life.
Yes. And the wrapping would be removed every 2 days to prevent infection. But sometimes,
isn't that nice?
Sometimes excess flesh would be either cut away or left to rot off. Yeah. And the girls would be forced to walk long distances to hasten the breaking of their arches if they weren't broken by hand. So sometimes they would break the arch with the pressure of the binding, and if it wouldn't break with that, then they would make them walk around until it broke.
Whole body cringes.
Like,
I can't.
Yeah. It's
oh
horrible.
my God.
What we do for beauty, right?
Oh my God.
Not me. The wrapping would get tighter with every rewrap, and the shoes would be smaller and smaller and smaller, crushing the heel and sole together. And then it would take about 2 years total for this to happen.
Oh God.
Yeah, and
so they were suffering for 2 years.
Basically, yes. Oh no, the suffering lasts their whole life.
Oh, I'm sure you're right, because that's not how you're meant to walk.
These are some of the lovely things you can look forward to with foot binding. Infection.
Of course.
Because, even though they would they would try to be diligent about clipping the toenails, but depending on, the wealthier families, they would unwrap the feet once a day, which, can you imagine the pain these little girls had to go through with unwrapping the